think it's live. Okay, now it's live. Hi everyone. I was thinking about this recently, and it's come up in some conversations I've had, especially after my last email about balancing insurance and private pay. I can't tell you how often that I talk to therapists and they say things like, I often feel judged, and they're talking about feeling judged for the decisions that they're making in their practice, be it their fees, taking insurance, not taking insurance, being online, being in person, that like there's this sense of judgment from others, particularly other therapists, about the decisions that they're making in their practice. And I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about this because I think one, there is quite a bit of judgment in our industry about the right way to do things or the ethical way to do things or the legal way to do things. And, I'm not saying that we break laws, but I think there is a lot of judgment that happens. And I think there's also discomfort perceived as judgment. And here's what I mean by that. For example, when I started charging higher fees and I would disclose my fee to people, or they would ask my fee and I would tell them, I charge $350 a session. I used to perceive judgment. And it took me a while to understand that while some people might judge me, by and large, I think most of what I'm sensing is discomfort, and discomfort for whatever reason. And often it's a reason within themselves, the other person. So discomfort with the number, discomfort with the idea of charging that themselves, discomfort with what that means, discomfort with their own money messages or the messages about what it means to pay for therapy. And I think that this is probably, barring like straight up judgment. I think a lot of times when we feel judged by other therapists, that it's probably more likely their discomfort. And I bring this up to say that we can use our skills as therapists to be non-judgmental despite our own discomfort with each other more often. And I think if we're feeling uncomfortable about what somebody else is doing with their practice, not because it's illegal or not because they're doing harm, right? That's different. But if we're just uncomfortable because they're making a decision that we aren't comfortable with, that we can acknowledge or be aware that that might come across as judgmental, that they might feel judged by us because we feel uncomfortable. And so it's something that I've really strived to think about for myself, and I really encourage others to think about, is that how is my own discomfort with whatever this is possibly coming across as judging? And how can I communicate about this in a way that actually reduces the sense of me judging them and illuminates that this is actually my own discomfort and not a judgment. I think this comes across a lot when we talk about fees, where somebody's talking about what they charge and someone might comment like, oh, I could never charge that. Or like, oh, I feel really, like I think it's important to be accessible or whatever. It's, statements like that can be perceived as judgmental, even if they're not intended to be. So I think particularly in the social media space, and I'm so grateful that our community, this community is seems to be so mindful of that and does such a great job at discussing things in a way that feels really welcoming and warm and inclusive. But I do think it's important to continue to be mindful of how we interact around our own discomfort, where it's not coming across as judgmental. And that, if we are feeling judged, that we can even think about how maybe this other person isn't actually judging me. Maybe they're feeling uncomfortable, or maybe they're feeling a dissonance and it's hard for them to describe that, or they're not aware that that's what they're feeling. And so, I think in taking on that mindset, that's helped to free me and to free people that I've worked with in coaching from, to be able to make decisions about their practice that are aligned for them, that maybe their neighbor isn't doing, or maybe isn't aligned for their neighbor, and to not feel judged for it, to not judge others. And so, yeah, just to just to reiterate, like, we can do a better job as a community, as therapists, to communicate non-judgment to each other around the decisions that we make in our practices, in our businesses, especially if we are aware of our own discomfort when we are confronted with how other people are running their practices, and if we are aware of how that discomfort might come across as judgment. And if we're aware that other people's discomfort might be perceived as judgment, that maybe we can have these conversations differently, be more supportive of each other, and continue to support each other in making and creating aligned businesses that look different one person to the next. All right, that's my thoughts for today. Have a great day, guys.